Welcome to Pratidhwani, where we try to humanize science. It is my delight and pleasure to introduce you to my guest on this particular episode, Mayurika. Mayurika has been a senior faculty member at IISER Pune, and she has played a very important role in setting up an institution like IISER Pune, not only in terms of research, teaching, but also so many other things, which we hopefully will discuss. Welcome to Pratidhwani, Mayurika.
Thank you, Pawan. It's a pleasure to be on this show, and you can blast away with your questions. I'm more than happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Mayurika, tell us a little bit about how you got interested in science. Let's start with your childhood. Where were you born, and what is the kind of background you come from?
So I was born in Kolkata and born into a family of medical doctors. So my parents, my grandfather, my uncles, they're all doctors. So I've only known doctors around me. So my mother's friends, my father's friends, they've always been doctors. So that was one thing where I got interested in biology, because it was something that I thought that it would be aligned to what my parents or my grandfather was doing. And over time, I think biology interested me, although in school, biology is quite boring. You have to mug up things. But then I think when when I was doing my 11 and 12, and I studied human physiology, that really interested me. But I never wanted to be a doctor because, as my mother had said, you really have to choose between career and family when you're a doctor. And she chose family. So she had given up a decade of her career to raise both me and my sister. And I think that was not something that I wanted to do myself, but also I wanted to give time to having a family as well as being interested in the work that I'm doing. And I think the research area that I am right in, it gives me immense flexibility, and therefore I'm able to manage both hopefully well. And that what motivated me into doing science, because it's been science all around me. Although I was also interested in literature, I really enjoyed literature, English literature especially, and I love reading books. So when I had to write essays in my school days, I would be very involved when I was writing my essays. So the choice was between English literature and biology, but I think biology took over because finding things, trying to understand what's going on behind whatever we know that is happening around, especially the human body, which still intrigues me till today, made me move into science, and therefore I finished my schooling in Calcutta, and then went to college also in Calcutta, to Presidency College. And for my master's, I went abroad. I went to England and did my master's there, and did my PhD also in England, and finally moved off to Boston in the US to do my postdoc. And I did two postdocs. One was for 4 years, and the other was for 1.5 years. And it was during the last postdoc, which was at MGH Cancer Center. I decided that I wanted to work on breast cancer, cancer in general, but more so on breast cancer because it is a disease that is right now the number one killer disease in India, and its prognosis is very poor, especially for Indian women. And the way that the disease manifests itself in India is very different from the Western world. And that really made me go into working more on breast cancer, which is what my lab right now is researching on.
Wonderful. Yeah, you've given a kind of a long arc. We're going to visit each and every point in the arc. First and foremost is your influence, or your mother's influence on you. It's very clear that
Yes.
yeah, she had an impact.
Huge impact, yes, because she was the one who actually looked after my studies, or looked at even my sister's studies. So she played a pivotal role in what I wanted to do, and I think her sacrifice had an influence on me. I just felt that I needed to do something to make it worth her sacrifice, and I think she today is very proud.
Obviously, yeah,
That
of course.
of where I am today.
Very nice. So, growing up in a family of doctors, uh, it is usually very kind of serious environment.
Yeah.
And what kind of life you had growing up? Uh, your father is also a doctor, I
Yes,
suppose.
yes,
Yeah.
he's a doctor. Yes.
So,
It. I think my life was fun. I mean, I enjoyed things because studies was never imposed, but I would do my studies. So it was never imposed, and I, because I love reading books, I would really get, so whenever I had to do, my textbooks, I would do that. Sometimes I remember I used to actually hide my storybook behind my textbook and read my storybook, because I wanted to finish, like when I so especially when you're in a mystery book, you want to finish, you want to know. So I would do that, and I recall very well that even in the library I used to like take books every alternate day. That was how fast I used to read. Obviously my parents didn't know that I used to do all of this, but I think it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed my time. I really had it was not a very serious environment, because none of my parents, they never insisted that I had to be a doctor or I had to be an engineer. We were left to choose what we wanted to do. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it is also kind of interesting because uh, being a kind of within the family of a doctors, and also growing up in an environment where there's reasonable freedom, as you were mentioning.
Yes.
Was it also something you found within your community? For example, your friends. What was that kind of an environment you had?
So going to my schooling was in Irish convent. So there, there was a lot of openness. There was so my friends and all, they also are. I mean, there was nothing where we were restrained from doing what we wanted to do, and therefore, um, both intellectually as well as academically, there was freedom, and that really helped us. So yeah, it's like when you're it's a little bit of an exclusive education, and therefore there was no hindrances or any barriers that I think none of my friends faced. And I'm still in communication with a lot of my school friends till today, and yeah, people are really doing well.
Tell us about the Irish convent you went to.
So this is Loreto, which there's a lot of branches in India, and Calcutta itself had many of them. And so it was a convent education, so there's a lot of discipline, um, but I think this discipline really helped to mold us into the way that we are today, which I actually do find it lacking in schools nowadays, especially even in my daughter's school. I don't see that much of discipline that's there. But it was not that you had to be a because you're a girl that you have to do this and that. I think we were not taught this. Rather, today I find that the outlook is very conservative. We did not grow up in a conservative society in my time. So I don't know what has happened, but then yeah, there was discipline, but there was also, we had wonderful teachers. That's the biggest advantage for us, and I really enjoyed my school days. And I yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So the seeds of interest in science were kind of sown during that time, or was it something which happened gradually for you?
So it was gradually. So it obviously, my mother, seeing my mother as a doctor, the interest in science was there. I really had very good teachers in school, and I think what really interested me later on was in college at residency, where we had good teachers, good lecturers, but then there were two particular teachers, or I should say three, that really made us interested in the science. Because although I did botany honors, I was never interested in plants. But then we had no other option. There
Is
was
it?
yeah. So it was only botany, zoology, and physiology. So botany, because you could go on excursions. That's why I chose botany, so that we could go on excursions. But in that final year, the third year, I could do what right now we are doing, which is cell biology, molecular biology, biochemistry, and that really made me very interested in science. And and that's what I guess went ahead and pursued later on.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about specific parts of your school education, especially the kind of stuff you studied. Were you also studying something over and above what was generally taught in school, or was it because of the fact that at home you already have very very high kind of competence in terms of science? Was it kind of dinner table conversations were already sufficiently
No,
technical?
we didn't talk science. No. So studies. So it was an ICSE school.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was whatever the syllabus was, and it was nothing different from. So we didn't have to. And in my time, there was no internet, there was no
Yeah,
computers,
same.
so it was only books
Yeah.
from the library that we had to get. I think really the interest for research and science was in college, because that's when I was exposed to books that nowadays you find in libraries very easily, but I had to buy them because there was otherwise impossible to study.
The study. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. In fact, that is something probably our generation had a distinct advantage over the current one.
Right.
People might say, "Oh, things have evolved." It's good, of course. Maybe ebooks are available much more easily, but the framework of your universe was through the books.
through books. And I think uh, today's generation is like, you don't need to, as they say in classes, I don't need to remember because I can just Google it. But then assimilation is something that they cannot do because it's not there.
Ingrained.
It's not ingrained.
Right.
So for us, it was, you had to go through different books and then make an overall picture. It was there was not even ChatGPT to write out
So correct.
the whole the answer for. So I felt it was a very wholesome education. The current generation will disagree, but I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you're actually mentioning. So, what kind of books were you studying other than the ones what you were mentioning? You did mention mystery. I will come to that in a more elaborate sense, but I'm curious to know.
So it was the classics was obviously there. So from classics, I went on to. So I read more English books than I should have read Bengali books. Although in Bengali I did read the classical Bengali books. But mainly it was the classics, and then mystery is what was, and it still intrigues me. But then later I read about more of the Latin American authors, and they're actually my favorites. So Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Jose Saramago, they are my favorites.
Fantastic. Yeah. I have some kind of very different kind of experience, and also a pleasant experience of both literature and art, because I lived in Barcelona for almost a year. It actually blew my mind because 1 year was not enough at the end of the day. It was so rich in terms of culture and tradition. So one of the aspects which you also mentioned about is that you switched over to college in Presidency College, if I'm correct. So you studied in the same school up to 12th, I assume?
Yes.
So what was the kind of thought process during that time? Because given that both of your parents are doctors, and in 9th standard onwards up to 12th is actually a pressure cooker situation for a lot of them.
Actually, I never felt that. Never felt it. Never. So it was like regular. So even I remember in my 9th standard, with the teacher's permission, I went to England for 3 weeks for holiday, and it was fine. I mean, the teachers were absolutely fine about it, and I still did very well in my class, and my SSC was also very good. So I would say I switched in the sense that I did West Bengal board in 11 and 12, but then that again opened me up to more literature that I would not have had to probably study. So for us in ICSE it's Shakespeare, but then here I actually studied a very ancient text called Beowulf, and it was different, and it's much more older than Shakespeare in English. So that exposed me to another.
Oh, wow, that's so. I'm very sure that would have had an impact on your communication skills, because it is very good. Because I've heard so many talks. I'll be linking some of the talks which Mayurika has given, which are online. I have already kind of in in my Zotero links, but I'm going to anyway link them. But going to this particular college, the transition what you had, presidency, very reputed college,
Right.
in means not just only in Kolkata, probably across India, it is one of the most reputed colleges. So, what was the kind of transition you had? Was it very easy, or in terms of what took you there? Can you tell us a little bit about?
So everybody would like to go to the presidency.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's one of the at my time it was one of the best. So you giving an exam and then hoping your number is there in the list, and they only take 20 students per department. It was an eye opener for me because schooling was very elite in some sense. You are with same the people from the same society, kind of strata of society. Here was my first eye opener for seeing people from other parts of Bengal, from rural areas, and even we had a friend that could not really speak English, but he used to read the Statesman. He used to get the Statesman every day to learn English, so that they could come to the same level as us. Teaching, obviously, medium is in English, and but it was very different to see people from other other parts of Bengal coming here of completely different educational background, but we made great friends, and these friends have really stayed on.
Usually that happens, so
Yes.
that when you go into college, that is actually very crucial.
You gain maturity, and also these friends. So whenever I go back to Kolkata, we visit. We have this regular meeting up that we do.
Fantastic. So, what are the topics you chose to do?
So it was botany honors with zoology and chemistry as the past subjects.
So this is usually the kind of direction in which a lot of medicine people who were interested in medicine used to take, even during my time. Exactly the same thing, and I found that to be slowly changing quite a bit, because there are also other areas where people are kind of exploring. So was it kind of deliberate, or was it that you wanted to do these subjects, or biology was interesting?
Biology was interesting, and as I mentioned that in presidency the option was only botany honors, zoology honors, and physiology honors. So it was a choice as to which one to take, and as I said, it was excursions. There were many more excursions in botany, and therefore that was really the reason. But also because also in the third year we got to know that we would be doing these other subjects, which is what really I was interested in learning, rather than learning taxonomy and all that stuff. So
yeah, that's something which is very fascinating. In fact, probably you would have also then done a lot of stuff, laboratory work in zoology, including
dissecting
and other things.
Dissecting a pilar, dissecting the cockroach, pigeon.
Wow, is it?
We also had the pigeon.
Wow.
It was only one class because we didn't want to kill too many pigeons, but we did have a pigeon practical. Thankfully, didn't come for the exam, but yeah.
Wow.
But that was a tough one.
Indeed. So, were you also thinking about something related to these topics as a future career in presidency? What was your kind of thought process there?
So the one of the things I want to do was really, as I said, move into more of cell molecular biology, and the opportunity then in India was really not there. I mean, yes, you could go give entrance exams and try JNU where they had biotechnology, or Madurai, Kamraj, all these places. But again, these exams were actually hard to crack at that time. And not many people from Bengal were actually giving those exams. So right now, I mean, now it's, people are always doing it, but not in my time. But I wanted to do work on, as I said, cell and molecular biology, and therefore I kind of, my third year, I was kind of getting a feeling of what I really would want to do, what are the areas that would interest me. It was not yet cancer at that time, but not botany for sure. That was there. So when I started applying to England for my master's, I was choosing areas where I could make that switch.
Mm.
So I took biotechnology and pharmacology as one of the ways of changing, and that helped me to then further do my PhD and my
Very
postdoc.
interesting. Very interesting. So, which also means that you already are thinking about doing your masters elsewhere,
Yes.
because as you mentioned, the avenues was not very straightforward. Because I can totally understand, because India then, even like in 90s,
This was 90s.
yeah,
Yes.
surely it would be around 90s, was nowhere as connected. At least there was no internet, as you clearly mentioned, and also the familiarity with the places was not very prevalent. Even growing up in South, everything above India's was North.
Right. True.
And I assume it would be the same thing.
Yeah, true. It was true.
In the thing.
Yeah, because you did not have any other people in these places. So,
Yeah.
like, normally people have, as they call, seniors in other places, and you get information. Here, there was no information. And so, whether you are in, say, Delhi or you're in England, it didn't really make a difference, because it was completely unknown area. Only thing is that all the applications to England, used to get books that they used to send, the prospectus, and you go through the prospectus, and then you figure out how things were. The other reason for choosing England was my childhood I had spent in England when my parents were giving their medical degrees.
Oh, is it? Nice.
So I had spent about 4.5 years in England before I came back to India and started from class 1. So my formative years was in England.
So you did have some kind of roots there.
Yes. So I was more comfortable going there than to anywhere
absolutely
else.
Makes sense. So tell us a little bit about that second trip. So because culturally, it would be a big change. Although you would have already got exposed to it, because you were in a very kind of already English, or rather Irish. I should be very careful about this, because Irish and English, they would probably not want to mix up things. But going into England, with the presidency degree, which is of course probably would be holding you in a higher stake, a kind of good training, most probably even at a higher level. But what was that transition like? What was your preparation? Because it's unusual for somebody to go to do a master's. Leave aside now, even then, actually, it was not.
Yes,
not
no,
so
it
easy.
was not. So obviously, it was getting a studentship was important.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing was, I was familiar with the surroundings, because this was a place close to Birmingham. That was where I actually had spent my early years.
Oh, is it?
Wolverhampton. The only thing I faced once again was racism that had not gone. Even when I was a child, racism was there. Very subtle, but then it was there. The same thing I felt again when I went back for my master's as well as my PhD, where a lot of non-Indians, or I would say white people, they would not sit beside you in the bus. They would not sit beside you in the trains. But that's fine, because then I get the space. But it was kind of obvious, and that was it. So in the institute, it was fine. There was no issues. But it's the outside. And I can kind of understand, because the Indians and the Pakistanis and the Bangladeshis that stay there, they live a very ghettoed life.
Yes.
And that's what all of us kind of are perceived as. And anyway, they think that we are all Pakis, as they call us.
Exactly.
And there's no point in arguing with them or telling them. It's just fine. It's okay. But I think this ghetto life has also made the non-Asian people very I don't know, they don't like it, and they feel that they're always there to mug you, or that was an issue. And I felt that. And also, these people had come in the 60s, when they required more people from India to come and help them to build their railroads, etc. A lot of, and I had friends that were second generation, third generation Indians. Their outlook is so conservative that they have not left the 60s. So when they saw me and how I was, this non-conservative individual, they were quite shocked, and they would say that, "Are you really an Indian?" That was what I was asked by them.
Wow.
Because they were still in that,
British,
long, that era, that, where actually the girls unfortunately got married off right after the masters. There was nothing further after that, which was very sad, but that's how their life was. And so that was something, I saw. But I had a lot of friends from all colors and all communities, which I still maintain friendships with them, and that has helped. And it was a fun time. Actually, I had a really nice time. Getting to know of other cultures, also eating food from other cultures, and and
Wonderful, wonderful. So please tell us a little bit about the exact place and the institution.
So masters was at University of Wolverhampton, and sorry, my bad. Masters was at Sheffield. So it was at Sheffield Hallam University, and my PhD was at University of Wolverhampton. And
so in these places, were you trying to get into molecular biology then?
Yes.
Or
so
what kind of areas were you?
Yeah. So my first switch was into biotechnology, which required molecular biology. So that was in my master's. And then I started applying for PhDs. I had to go for interviews, and that was when I was trying to actually work on cancer. And my first work was actually in my PhD on breast cancer, where I looked at nitric oxide synthase and its effect in breast cancer. And so that was there was a 3 years PhD. And then moved on to the US for the postdoc.
Yeah, we'll come to that particular point. I want to spend a little bit more time on the Sheffield experience, because that is crucial, where you would probably be making a transition from being an undergraduate who is interested into becoming a serious researcher, because generally most of the time PhD you already are in.
Right.
Masters is the time where you really have to make up your mind. Can you please tell us a little bit about that particular period?
So it was learning a lot of different and new subjects from what I was used to till my BSc. It was also a time I had to use computers, and that was quite tough, in the sense that the first assignment, from starting the first assignment, we had to do the assignment on the computer, and I had to tell my the teacher that, "I'm sorry, spare me, at least for my first assignment, I'll handwrite it and give it." But then it slowly, obviously, got used to using the computer, and then that was the transition. So that was a little bit of a little hiccup that I had initially, but it's just that listening to seminars, listening to talks, and it's a very international. It was an international program, so just this discussion, and we had to do a small kind of a research project, and that was when I really understood that this is what I would like to do. And you have a problem, and you try to design an experiment, and then give a talk, and then there you're not really doing the experiment, but then reading papers, and then kind of understanding how to. This work was on a protein called P10, and how this protein plays a role in cancers was what I was looking at. So just giving that talk and that confidence, and the fun of going through textbooks, going through some research papers in the library still, was something I really liked, and I just felt that I should stick to cancer research. And later on I decided on breast cancer, especially after coming on, actually right before coming to India. But then cancer research was something.
Yeah. In fact, we'll go a little deeper as we progress, because it's also related to the DNA damage work that you've been doing, which is very fascinating. Before we actually get into the PhD part of your work, tell us a little bit about your kind of new exposure to some particular topics. during that time, as you already mentioned, you did have some specific training. Of course, the mechanics of doing the masters itself is actually quite challenging sometimes. But were there any new topics, for example, molecular biology, for example, going from a traditional Indian education of botany, zoology, and physiology, and into molecular biology, especially in a different environment, is probably not an easy transition.
No, actually, the third year where we actually, where our, as I said, those three, especially two of the teachers that we had, they would teach us from the books that really helped us to get the foundation prepared for doing molecular biology, biochemistry, and cell biology. So it was not tough because that foundation was there. And therefore it was just adding more knowledge to now what the current research was. Just helped me to really understand what was going on. So it was not a setback, or it was not a kind of an issue that I did not know about it. So it actually helped. I think that last year, which was the interesting year for us, for me, and it really helped. I mean,
see, that is one point I would want to stress a little bit more upon. There is a lot of criticism of Indian education, deservingly so, in a lot of quarters. But there are certain things we may have got it right. I'm not telling we have got it right on a lot of issues, but there are certain aspects. For example, some, at least in so-called schools and elite schools of thoughts, the rigor of thinking and the training is very good.
Yes.
And as you already alluded to, that there is some kind of education which you do have, which many a times would be even more competitive, better.
Yes, I totally agree on that. Yeah, I totally agree. Now I think with opening up of everything, I think it's very it's kind of becomes similar. But I think that the way that we are taught in schools is still, I think, considered one of the better ways of
I agree with you.
Pursuing whatever you want to pursue. I know, I mean, we complain that so much to study, but then I think it makes a difference.
Finally. Yes. Yeah. Also, the peer pressure is too much.
It's gone worse now.
It's gone worse. But to connect this particular point, the peer pressure is there. But if somebody actually is somehow negating or somehow kind of muting that pressure, and only considering it as an environment in which you can learn from other students, it's a wonderful place, right? For example, IITs and even IISERs are undergrads.
Right. I mean, they get a really much better education than I think I had even gotten in my time.
Same here. Absolutely.
The kind of stuff that they are taught, I mean, it never existed in my time, and the opportunities they get after the IISER education is way more than what options I had when I moved. And I think there are a lot of them that are coming back, and I feel they have way better CVs than I even have. Because it just has this, they've done way better, and I'm proud.
Absolutely.
Because finally we've taught them.
Absolutely. We'll come to that part of it, because that is also very, very equally important and interesting time where Mayurika has contributed a lot. Now we'll go to the time where you did your PhD. Specifically, tell us a little bit about your research problem, what you worked on, what kind of questions were you interested in.
So it was looking at studying how nitric oxide that is produced by cells is it's a double-edged sword. So too much of nitric oxide is harmful for cells because it causes DNA damage and leads to cell death. And however, cells, especially cancer cells, also produce nitric oxide. So it was kind of studying the balance as to which part is beneficial and which part is actually harmful, was what I was studying, using my first experience in doing cell culture, handling breast cancer cells, and then doing various assays, actually seeing that nitric oxide that is produced by the more invasive cells actually help the cell in its movement and invading into the surrounding. So these were some of the studies that we had done, and obviously a 3-year PhD is not enough, but one had to finish in 3 years. There was no other option or route.
Wonderful. So you were working on some specific cell lines. There are very famous cell lines, the Barca cells. Is there?
No, this is MCF7s and
okay.
MDMB231, which even right now we're using in my lab still.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are two different. One is a non-invasive adenocarcinoma, and the other one is a metastatic breast carcinoma.
Did you have to learn any new technological aspects during your PhD?
Everything I had to learn. Everything. Starting from cell culture, from doing the assays to doing Western blotting, everything I had to learn. And I think that was the fun part. Because a PhD is really for learning. And that's what I did, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. What lessons did you derive, Mayurika, out of your PhD? Because in hindsight, it's easier sometimes. You may sometimes also not look at some things which you may not like, but overall, you can at least extract some meaningful information or some meaningful lesson out of it. What was the
from the work
and your general experience?
From the work, I actually continued a little bit of the nitric oxide part of the work when I started my own lab here. And we actually published a paper also on that, but in connection with another protein. But overall, the PhD so it was not just my own work, but then also seeing other PhD students from other labs, just the interaction, the discussions, and each one of us were helping each other whenever we were stuck with problems or whatever, because always your PI was not there. But then when you had senior or sometimes postdocs, senior people that would help you to kind of figure out how to do things. And also with Arnav being there, he was in Glasgow though, but then we also spoke about our science. So that
you knew each other from when?
We know each other since class 11.
Okay, I should mention, okay, Arnav Ghosh, who is also a biologist and a faculty member at IISER Pune. Also happens to be Mayurika's husband. Okay. And they're wonderful people. In fact, we know them since the inception of the institution almost. And hopefully I'll also talk to Arnav at some point of time. So tell us a little bit about that phase, Mayurika, because we have been just talking about the science. Because of course there's a personal element also related to this, and that's an important phase for anybody at any point of time. So you already had some kind of intention to move to England, and you both planned in that way?
Yes. We both went for our masters together. We both did the PhDs me in England, he was in Scotland. And then we both moved to the US for a postdoc. So it was, and we both came back together to India. Obviously decided that we will be in the same city. Thankfully we were in. I mean, we had to do a Bharat Darshan for our for our interviews, but then yes,
we'll come to that point. I would be very eager to.
Two-body problem is a big problem.
That is something I would really, I would want to pick your brain on. But before that, we'll just go through this particular part of it. Where you already are finishing up this work at the UK, in fact in England, and then are you thinking about the kind of problems you want to work on going forward in postdoc? Was there any kind of specific area you were targeting or interested in? You already had the basic training into cancer.
So it was not that I wanted to stick to cancer. I wanted to also do a little bit of a different system and then figure out what I would like to do in my own lab. So that was one reason I actually moved into a different area. So I was working on neurodegeneration in yeast. So using yeast as a model system to study Huntington's disease, which was totally and far removed from all the cancer work I've done. And that was 4 years of a very, very fruitful postdoc. And I really learned a lot.
This was in a hospital, right?
This was in Tufts University.
Tufts University. Okay.
In Boston.
Mm.
And that was, I mean, I think my postdoc was a very, very fruitful time, because being in the Boston area, it really, really helps. You don't need to go to conferences because there are so much happening. There are so many of these hospitals under Harvard. There are, so many other universities in Boston itself. We used to go for this monthly DNA damage meeting, which had MIT. Broad had not yet come at that time, but MIT, Harvard, Tufts, a lot of us, even from UMass, Worcester, people would come, and it would be like two postdocs giving a talk, and it was very, very, it was just wonderful, and just listening to the science by not leaving the city was really helpful. It was amazing.
I have had very kind of small exposure to that particular place. It is an outstanding kind of environment to really do research. So
it's always your buzz of
absolutely.
And meeting great friends, meeting really really wonderful people that helped in work as well as just socially. It was fun.
So, paint us a picture of Boston, because the Tufts is actually within the vicinity. Right. It's a very nice city, with a river and other things. Could you please just give us a little flavor of the place?
Yeah, sure. I was very skeptical going to the US because I've never been to the US. So England was as far as I'd been. Europe, yes, I'd been there too. I was not very keen on going to US. I really wanted to be in London. I actually did get an offer in London.
Okay.
But obviously, since we decided that both of us would be in the same place, I moved to Boston. Boston is very England-like, so I felt quite at home. Also, I actually enjoyed Boston. We stayed there for 6 years, stayed in the same house for 6 years.
Wow, is it? Okay. Nowadays,
it's very difficult. It's very difficult, and it was a very nice wooden house that we stayed in, and it was really one of the it was a different feeling. And here you are no longer students; you are kind of independent researchers. It was just fun. We had a lot of gatherings where, I mean, mostly in my house, because I used to I love cooking, and I used to cook a lot of Bengali stuff, as well as learned a lot of other kinds of cooking, and
fascinating.
It was fun.
Fascinating. It's also one of the places where there's very interesting amalgamation of cultures.
Yes.
Including music and maybe art and other forms.
Yes.
Were you also kind of, and there are many, many authors there, by the way.
True.
Even sometimes comparable to even New York. For New York is actually in a slightly different thing, for slightly more business oriented aspect too. But there is no doubt that Boston has so many
academic
stuff.
So the good thing was Boston is not too far from New York, and I love art. So visiting galleries was something we would do whenever there was a new installation or whatever. Say the MoMA in New York, we would travel by bus, the Chinese bus, and visit and come back, and that was a huge advantage for us. And visiting museums has always been one of things that we did in England. I did also back in the US, and it was nice because art is something I appreciate. Art is something I really love, and there were a lot of still independent bookstores in Boston, which have now gone, most of them, except I think one or two are still left. Just going there and sitting with a book was something I really enjoyed. And this was something I actually did in England too, where I would go to the bookstore, drinking a cup of coffee and reading a book with jazz music happening. So you had jazz also. So jazz is something that both Arnav and I love, and we would go for jazz music.
It's actually the best way to seep in the music and also
Right.
and the book what you're. I agree with you. Even I have similar experience
Mm-hmm.
where yeah, it's something which has to be encouraged, and
Yes,
also
absolutely.
some very deep connection between music, especially instrumental music,
Mm-hmm.
and learning and
True,
thinking
true.
and other things.
And the other thing with Boston, I mean,
Mm,
at least Harvard was invite a lot of Indian
mm.
classical musicians, and
Yes.
that's where you very close encounters with Zakir Hussain,
Wow.
with
Okay.
Amjad Ali Khan, with you. I mean, we could hear all these maestros, which here would be quite tough getting tickets,
Take
but
this.
there it was free, and you
Yes.
just land up.
Our colleague Nagraj
Mm-hmm.
actually described in his episode about his interaction with Vishwa Mohan Bhatt,
Right,
and
right.
it's something which is like really really moving. So the Boston. You also spent quite some time in Harvard Medical School.
Mm-hmm.
Could you
Yes.
tell us that experience? Was that a continuity of the
So
project,
no,
or
no,
was something
no.
like that?
So I finished the project on Huntington's disease
Mm, mm,
in the lab at Tufts University, and then I moved on to Massachusetts General Hospital
hospital.
Cancer
Yeah.
Center, which
Mm,
is part of Harvard Medical School.
mm,
There, I joined a lab that was working on DNA damage. So even when I was doing the Huntington's disease, it was somewhat linked to the cell cycle checkpoints area, which was what I think really made me interested that this is what I wanted to continue with.
continue.
And that's when I decided I'm going to look for labs where that is being worked upon, but in mammalian cells, because that was a time I was thinking of that, time for me to go back to India with
India.
a job. And so working with East and Huntington's will not help me
Mm.
because it's not a disease that is common in India,
Yeah.
and therefore getting grants will be very tough. So I decided to move back into kind of cancer, broad area cancer. And that's when I moved into a DNA damage cell cycle checkpoint field for 1.5 years of the postdoc at MGH Cancer Center. And that's the work that I'm actually continuing
Continuing. Yeah.
in the
It's a
lab
very
here.
very fascinating area. Give us a gist of the DNA damage problem for us to just
Mhm.
know why is that important? How is it connected to cancer?
Right. So this DNA damage is constantly happening while we're sitting here, yeah,
Exposure to
all the
light.
time.
Yeah.
But because we have a lot of non-important DNA, I don't want to use the word junk because now that's not the right word to use.
Yeah. Yeah.
But 85% of the DNA is such. So there will be, mutations happening, but it's not affecting any of essential genes. So when one of our important genes in the signaling cascade gets disrupted, or there's a mutation, that's when the motion sets in for having cancer or any other kind of disease. So cancer is really, it's our own cells that go berserk. And it really starts from a cell. So as I was talking about, the work is on cell cycle and checkpoint. So these are features that are present in the cell to actually keep it's a surveillance system. So that if there's a damage, it will give time for the repair of the damage, and if the damage is beyond repair, it goes undergoes programmed cell death. But what happens is that when the damage is kind of not seen by the cell, and it stays back in the cell, stays back, and the mutation stays back in the DNA, and the cell is not able to recognize it, and then it perpetuates over generations. And this, if it happens in, say, a protein that is looking at proliferation, so you have now excessive proliferation, and the cell will then do many other things where it will kind of stop. Say it's cell death, it doesn't want to die, and therefore it's going to kind of disrupt the pathway, and that is how the cell like starts to become into a cancerous cell, and then it's going to acquire many other properties for it to survive beyond its life. So it becomes immortal, and therefore it doesn't die.
And it also probably kills the other part of
it doesn't as such kill the other cells, but it'll if it is metastasizing, meaning it is invading and going to other organs, then that's the dangerous part. And that is when it is really very difficult to treat an individual.
Okay. Very interesting, very interesting. So now we'll again go back to the chronology, what we are following. Crucial question: why did you people make a decision to come back. No, because I am very sure with this kind of experience what you have, also given that you have uh, great training in biomedical sciences, because these are all very important topics, including including Western societies, and including the two places where you live there. You have to have some kind of a really, some kind of a thought process for two people who have established careers at very, very good places to really make a transition. And I should mention that that influenced so many people actually to come back, because seeing people like you folks coming back had an influence. I should mention uh, because 2010 is when was moving in, and you folks were already there for a couple of years then, and you people were one of the main folks who were actually trying to put together the place. So before we come to the IISER part of it, tell us what made you people think about this.
So both Arnab and I left in 1997, we on the flight, actually it was an Air India flight, the Boeing that is no longer going to be in service. It was that 747, right? So it was a 747. We were flying out. We decided, okay, we will come back. We are giving ourselves 10 years. So 2007, we should be back in India. And it is exactly 2007, the same month that we had flown out, we decided to come back. We never had wanted to stay back in anywhere outside India. I just felt that India is my country and I would like to be in my own country and do my own research here. Although we had no idea about the quality of science happening at that time, because we were out of the country for 10 years. So, but we were hearing that things are changing. CCMB, etc., NCBS, they were TIFR, research institutes that were, you were hearing about such institutes, and people were coming for conferences from these institutes. So you're interacting. So we decided, let's just go back and.
No, but even then, it's not as easy as what is making it sound. No, even for a person who has to make an individual decision, it's already a big leap.
Yes, but it was for two of us.
For two of you who have had, a similar kind of backgrounds, which means that it's easier for you to move into a different place in such kind of environments. Means it's still kind of surprising, right?
I know, but this is the real reason. This is the real reason. I mean, we had, it was just, we decided to come back. I mean, people would tell us, are you applying for green card? And I said, no, we don't want. As soon as, whenever the date ends on our visa, that's the day. We actually flew out the day before.
Wow,
yeah, we actually did also a trip to South America, to Peru. So that was another.
You went to Peru?
Yes.
Wonderful.
So yeah, it was, we just wanted to come back and do what we could do. It may not be the greatest of sciences, but then at least do whatever we could do here in India.
Tell us about the transition. How, of course, you had to go around a Bharat Darshan.
Yes, we had a 3-week Bharat Darshan before we came back. That was in summer of 2007. Yeah, summer of 2007. So we started from Calcutta to Delhi, to Bombay, to Pune, to Bangalore, back to Calcutta. Both of us giving talks in every institute. So it was tough in the sense that getting responses from the places that we wrote to was very,
non-trivial.
Yeah, it was, not many people responded. But we had mentioned, so this is one thing I also tell current individuals that want to come back, and if it's two people, if it's two-body issue, then mentioning that there's the other person coming along, because it's important, and also trying to say that I am going to other places, and therefore how one can fit the travels into the whole. You don't want to move back and forth between cities. If you're in one city, you do all the institutes there. So that was a lot of email exchanges between individuals that would respond, and I would say Shashi was the only individual that would respond in 2 seconds to all of this, and he also helped us in the sense that would put us in touch with individuals that he knew in the other institutes, that okay, they are coming, they, they can give a talk. So
I should mention, in the interest of the listeners, Shashi is LS Shashidhara, who is now currently the NCBS director, and he actually was the one who established the biology department, and also to a large extent, along with K.N. Ganesh, he played a very crucial role in establishing the IISER Pune. Yeah, please continue.
I think it's also because of Shashi, a lot of us, till I think 2011, 12, 13 came to IISER Pune. Because honestly speaking, I did not know about Pune. I did not know about IISERs to even start off with. And it was not in our plans. But it was Shashi. So we got to know Shashi through... so we had visited Hyderabad, and Arnav had met Shashi, and he kind of became our mentor, and it was very, very helpful for us. But he was constantly telling us, go to Pune and give a talk at so-called IISER Pune, which did not even exist. There was nothing. There was no building. So I said, why the hell would I go to Pune of all places? And that too, it's not a city. Being a city girl, not being in a city was something like, oh no, I don't want to go to Pune. And but we still came because we just felt that he was insisting. We came from Bombay. And I think I'm glad I came and gave our talk, because we were made to feel so much at home when we gave our interviews. It was obviously in a different place. We did it at Agarkar Research Institute there. So the few faculty that were there, like Alok Das and RGB and all, RGB. And Sutit, they were all shipped to ARI to listen to us. So it was like physics, chemistry, math, biology, all listening to our biology talks, because that was all the faculty. There were just a handful. And after our talks, Shashi and Ganesh took us to Sci Trinity, which was then an open area. There was no walls, and he said that this is where we intend to make our transit campus. What do you think about it? I said, great, but will it be done before we come back? That was the biggest question. And Shashi had promised that yes, it will be done by the time you people come back. Also, we need your inputs into how to design the place. So yes.
Had they offered you people a position?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Within I think 2 months, we were offered the
Oh,
position.
good.
Also, we also got positions offered in other places, also in IISER Kolkata. So I was like, okay, it's a big decision. So if IISER Pune is going to offer us, we are going to take IISER Pune. And
because see, now the impression is that we have building, and the place is actually in a very different kind of viewpoint. It has because the sheer number is so big.
Yes.
We will of course discuss a little bit about the Sci Trinity building, because I know it was not only about just the research and teaching facility, but you also played a very important role in starting a small place which turned out to be the Decade Center.
Yes.
We'll come to that particular point, because I should mention that Mayurika has been the most instrumental person in bringing that particular facility to IISER Pune. And we are very thankful to you. Not only me, like me, so many of us could have not worked without that particular initiative. We'll come to that that particular point. Now, please tell us a little bit about that experience of setting up a lab, because literally it was an IT lab.
Yes.
And now the only good thing which to get started with was the cooling facility was pretty good.
It was actually one of the fun times that I actually had. I know it was detrimental for a research career, because literally 2 years there was nothing. But Shashi and Ganesh engaged us into the development of the place. Especially for biology, how we wanted to design the lab. So we actually had this so-called open lab system, which we still have in biology till today, was something that we were used to at MGH. And therefore it's easy because you can share things, and it's important that people share, and not just instruments, ideas too. And it's important for the students. It was really fun. I mean, I had to order chemicals, thinking of the future. Then you just like ordered, and then learning the ropes of bureaucracy
Yeah.
in ordering. Oh my God, that was a big challenge. But Shashi really uh, took us through the
The
steps of
steps.
ordering. The other big thing realization was how long it takes for chemicals to come
Come
to
on.
India. In the US, it was you pick up the phone. If you call in the morning, by evening you'll have your order there, or at most next day. Here it was 4 months
Mayurika,
minimum.
unfortunately, even after 15 years,
It is the same.
it is the same.
It is the same.
That's actually very disheartening,
Yes.
right? That's
Yeah.
unfortunate, actually.
And I think that was when we learned that you have to think ahead and acquire things, which sometimes can be a wastage because maybe you may not at all need it in your experiments, but you've already paid for it and the item has arrived. Maybe 10 years, sometimes 15 years later, we have this, we can use this, and this still work. It still
Yeah.
works. I think some things that I had bought in SciTunity, I'm still using.
Absolutely,
Because
same here.
it was all bottled up, never opened, and it stayed. But I think thinking ahead, planning the work was a big training that I learned after coming back to India, because there it was like you design and you just get your things and it's there and
Nice.
no issues.
Nice. Did you have teaching experience by then?
Not at all, not at all. But yeah, that was a challenge. I think
right?
taking the first class was
How was it?
very challenging because
You
I
probably literally would have taught the first batch.
Yeah,
First
batch, yes.
Yeah,
The 2006
sixth batch.
yes.
Yeah, I did teach, but they were already
they were in the second year.
Yeah.
And the 2007 is the batch that I'm most closest to because they were the first
one, exactly.
first for me. So, but I think the challenge was figuring out what level to teach. But I actually have my slides starting from 2008 onwards till today, and I look back at those slides sometimes to see that because I always work on the previous year's slides and add information.
Makes sense.
So it's just amazing to see how the transition from 2008 till 2024. But it was a huge challenge. So I think that was a time. It was helpful because I did not have any lab. There was no research, so I could spend my time on the teaching.
Yes.
Which today people have to juggle both.
Yeah.
Then I had time to think about what I wanted to teach. Here also you have to design your own syllabus, right? Because there's nothing set, which is a fun thing, which is great.
It is great, actually.
So you could, okay, this is what should be taught, this is what, and then you can change every year, and finally now it's settled because it's been over a decade. So
yeah, so I have similar experience, almost the same kind of thing. It also is very interesting because when we were in SciTunity, which was actually a makeshift campus, it's not very far from the actual campus, less than a kilometer away almost, and that kind of community was very interesting.
That's
right?
what I miss.
Right, we knew everybody from the person who is serving us the food and chai there, all the way to, of course, Ganesh.
Right.
And probably we would have all sat in one place and had tea, coffee, and faculty meetings.
Faculty meeting was in that small boardroom. All of us were there. So I think I really miss that time when we were small and we knew each other. We in some ways also knew each other's work much more than now. I don't even recognize new faculty. They are way younger. Are they postdocs? Are they faculty? So yeah, I really had a nice time, and I think I miss SciTunity a lot.
It is also a place where the first kind of daycare center was started. Could you please tell us about that origins?
So because my daughter was born after I came back to India, and it was a challenge because you're setting up a lab, getting a teaching in order, and not having any kind of childcare facility in Pune as such, because all daycares, the few that were around this Pashan area, were only taking children after they're 1 year of
Yes,
age.
yes, yeah.
So it was a huge challenge. Anyway, I'd taken 5 months as maternity
Hmm.
leave, but when I came back, I actually had to get my parents, my aunt, Arnav's mother, 1 month at a time,
Yeah.
so that first 1 year could kind of pass.
Manage.
And we managed, and we had to do half days, which was not very helpful. And that was when I think Shashi saw a plight. And then he said that, okay, I'm going to give you a room on the sixth floor in the neighboring building
Yeah,
of
yeah.
where our labs were.
Lupin around.
Yeah, in the Lupin building on the sixth floor. He gave me a room and said, get Irabati with your nanny and use that room as the daycare.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And I think that really helped me, because I would get her in the morning and she was there till I was going home. And I know that she was there,
Exactly.
being looked after. And I would see her during feeding time, etc., and it made a huge difference. So when we started the main campus here, um, I think we were beyond 30 faculty. That's when actually Shashi told me that, it's high time you bug us for having a daycare in
Nice.
IISER, because you're more than 30 faculty,
Yes.
and as per the rules, the institute should provide a daycare. And that's when I spoke with Ganesh and requested that we set up a proper daycare.
Yeah.
Because now we are quite more, there's a larger strength, there are younger faculty joining.
Yeah.
With young kids. And he said, fine, you can start it so long as you are doing it, setting it up, managing. And it took me 6 months, but yes, I did it.
Yeah, I should mention that, as I mean, it should not go as a kind of, exaggeration, but it would have literally stopped the work at the institution. Because, so many of us who were like people who work, both husband and wife,
Yes.
have no other way, especially if you are not from the same place, and you also are away from your, kith and kin. That played a very critical role. And also, I know there's a lot of initiative being taken. You had to plan things. I still remember while moving into the first makeshift daycare, the arrangements which were discussed about, and some right from the cooking to to putting the place together. Because that actually is part of our children's growing up.
Yes.
And you can still see the affection which they would have developed with the people who have given them the care. And indirectly also, a lot of credit should go to Mayurika and also her team. A lot of people, probably right from Moshis, and so many people would have played a role. So we'll come to the research component of your group, Mayurika, now. Tell us a little bit about the questions, what you have been interested in over the years. And of course, we'll come to the mentorship, which also is a crucial part of your work. Please tell us a little bit about your research.
So what we are right now looking at, we have a couple of projects, but the overarching theme is looking at DNA damage and how deregulation of proteins lead to tumorigenesis. So what we are working with is breast epithelial cells that are non-tumorigenic, and we grow them in 3D matrices, and therefore they form acini, which is actually what is found in the human breast. And what we have shown is that when we gave say a chemotherapeutic drug, which has been used in patients, we were able to transform these cells. So the non-tumorigenic cell actually became tumorigenic. So what we were trying to say from this study was that when chemotherapy is given to individuals, yes, we are killing the cancer cells for sure, but we are also harming our normal cells. They're not becoming cancerous immediately. They are probably gathering damage, and just it needs a trigger for it to later on become a cancerous cell again. And that's why you get cancers happening, say with a 3-year gap or a 5-year gap. And that could possibly be one of the reasons why such an event is happening, because a lot of things just go completely gets messed up when you are actually giving chemotherapy. Um, However, that's the only solution in today's time. We still have to do it. There's no other option out from that. So what we have, so when we saw that we saw tumorigenesis, we were interested in looking at the signaling cascades and actually understanding what proteins in the signaling pathway were getting deregulated, and then hopefully if any kind of it can be used as a biomarker, because for Indians, breast cancer happens in women that are less than 40 years of age,
Yes.
compared to the US or UK where it is 55. And women also tend to get the highest grade of cancer, which is the grade 4, and triple negative breast cancer, where the so-called receptors that are present in the cells, they are mutated, and therefore the only way of treatment is chemotherapy. You cannot use hormone therapy because the hormone receptors are not there. So it is a very different outcome in Indian women, which is not there in the Western world. And therefore, we do not really have any such biomarker as to figure out, okay, if this protein is up or down, maybe cancer may happen. We don't know that for us. And since we don't know our genomes that well, and we are obviously very different from the Western world, within India, we are very diverse. So that's the other challenging problem that we have for cancer research in India. And so that was why we were thinking of like, I need to work on breast cancer. I need to figure if we can find some biomarkers through our studies that, okay, if these, proteins that are getting deregulated can be used as an early detection tool. So if somebody presents herself with cancer, then you just make a check and see that, okay, are these pathways deregulated, and therefore can we then use a better therapy to rectify
that particular point. Fascinating. So it also means that you will have to have not only deeper understanding of molecular biology, to a large extent you should probably be well versed in biochemistry also, right?
Yes, also some clinical
because you
collaborations with clinics. So that I have a collaboration from where we actually get patient samples.
It's within Pune?
Yes, it's within Pune.
Hospital or?
Yes, it's called Orchid Cancer Care.
Orchid Cancer Care.
So I get samples from them, and I've actually studied whatever we're doing in cells, check to see whether we see that in the so-called Western population, which is Pune and Bombay right now. So so that because whatever is known in the West is not what holds true for us in India, and therefore it's an important aspect to look at. And through this work, I've also been involved in a DBT funded project called the Genome India project, which is where the sequence of 10,000 genomes have been done. It's completed across India.
So the question,
and it is extremely diverse.
It's very, very diverse, right? It is actually something which is now it should be a common knowledge. Unfortunately, people don't appreciate that because it also tells us that we are indeed down to the genes. We are diverse.
Yes, we are very diverse. So any kind of therapy or whatever cannot be one solution. It will depend upon which part of India or what your genetic background is, because I might have migrated, like I've obviously come from the east to the west, but my genome is still of the eastern side. So, but this genome will really help because this is the normal genome. So there is no mutations as such mutations, or so I would not say mutations. There is people that are healthy. It's taken from individuals that are healthy. So they have no blood sugar, they have no diabetes, they have no hypertension, lipid, etc., cholesterol, etc. Because those were checked before the gene was, before the blood was sequenced.
Okay, very, very interesting. Very interesting. So this is a pan-India effort, right?
Yes,
because there is a huge number of institutions are actually involved. What is the kind of broad questions that people are interested in?
So right now, to understand the diversity, not really to understand where we come from.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not there.
That's already probably
Yes.
answered to a large
But
extent.
it's really to understand the diversity and to see the minute changes that are present in the different populations.
Yeah, nice.
So because this is looking at tribes, this is looking at communities, especially the project was done in a way that where there was no intermarriages, so it was kind of pure populations.
Yes, yes.
So, and interestingly, we do see there are such subtle changes that are not present in another community, for example, but it's present in this community, and it is to their advantage to that of that community. So
you can target
yes,
therapies and other things
right,
towards that particular community.
Right.
It's very interesting. Fascinating, fascinating. So what kind of training is necessary, for example, for somebody who is listening to this, who is not in your lab, who wants to actually, really do such kind of work, either with your lab or in your lab, or somebody who might want to have such a career. Please tell us a little bit about that, because that will then move into the mentorship, what you actually...
So the training would really be kind of whatever you study till masters, as MSc, obviously. That's so. In masters, they do teach biotechnology, they do teach molecular biology, cell biology, biochemistry. I think that level is good enough to start off with, because it's really advancements on that, and advancement really in the context of techniques. The whatever the knowledge is there, but then you just have to use techniques to really answer your question. So basic knowledge in the sciences is good enough. To
wonderful,
start.
Wonderful. So somebody who's listening to this, it's actually a very good thing. See, that's one of the fascinating things. Although my own training is in physics, I've seen that the research in biology has opened up a lot, because there is a lot more room for people from various different backgrounds to actually come in and learn, and also contribute in whatever way it's possible. And something which a lot of people would be interested, because it also caters to both curiosity and a very important problem, societally, so important, connected. So that is another question I had, Mayurika, because see, you work on cancer biology. There is one part, of course, you interact with a lot of scientists who work on such questions, but there's also a huge interest among general public, and for obvious reasons, because health and well-being is something which is very important across any society. What is the kind of interaction you have had over the years? I know you also have organized some events here.
Yes.
So many good things, not just only the scientific community, but it has involved everybody on campus, and even beyond the campus, within the city and beyond the city too. So tell us a little bit about that initiatives, what you have taken to really reach out and kind of bring in the awareness across the various different communities.
So with the help of that clinic, so we actually had organized breast screening camps. I think we had 2 of them, and I think it was very, very important, because screening is something that is the Indians don't do, whether male or female, it's not done, and that was a very regular thing one had to do in UK and US every year. And through the screening, I think it was the second screening, 3 individuals, 3 young girls actually detected with a small lump, and they went ahead and got it further checked, because obviously it was not good to just let it go. And they found that they could remove it before it actually. And I think 2 of them came back to me to say thank you for actually organizing these camps, because otherwise they would never have known. And so that was just building awareness amongst individuals that taking care of one's health is really important. And I think there's a lot of shows that talk about breast cancer, and how one should think about taking care of one's health, because as women we are always more bothered about the family. They come first, and we always take a back seat. I think that's not something that one should do. One should
Absolutely.
really take care of oneself, because if you need to take care of a family, you need
You
to stay
have to.
healthy. So those are some of the camps that we had organized for
Yes, yes. In
genuine
fact,
awareness.
all of our families actually have been great beneficiaries
Mm.
of these initiatives. And also, do you think this awareness is growing in India at least, uh, or there is a large room for betterment?
It is slowly growing.
Mm.
I think corporates are also including in the package
Yeah,
for
I
women
women.
that breast screening as well as cervical screening, which is
Yeah,
totally
totally.
not done.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like really unheard of.
Mm, mm,
But I think that's very, very important,
mm,
because of cervical cancer is one of the big issues, especially HPVs,
mm,
because of the state of toilets is
mm.
really, really poor in
Mm.
India. So one needs to be very, very careful of
Careful.
that. And I think the other awareness is that this HPV vaccine that is now there,
Mm, mm,
which is important for kids
mm,
to take
mm.
it, because it will help prevent future,
Future, yeah.
HPV infection,
Mm.
etc. So I think slowly awareness
Is
is
growing.
growing. It's not enough
It's
yet.
not enough. Yeah, yeah. That's something. Yeah, it's very critical. Even some students who might be listening to this, because if they are even aware of these things in terms of knowledge, it's
Hmm.
very good for them to go and talk to people
Exactly.
across. It doesn't matter. You only students, anybody who is actually there. So we will go to the part of your thought process on science
Mhm.
in general and science in India in particular, and furthermore, uh, women participation in science. We'll come to all the 3 points.
Okay.
One is, of course, science is universal,
Hmm.
and not only in terms of training, but also in terms of the way you can contribute to the knowledge, and in a way, it is both localized and it is globalized. In specific cases,
Hmm.
like very nicely, two projects what you're mentioning, the genome project
Right.
and also the the cancer project what you mentioned, has great relevance right down to the roots, but the knowledge is universal. That kind of connection between
Hmm.
the local and the global is one of the fascinating things
Right.
about science, and more so in your case, because for example, hardcore physics sometimes it doesn't have that kind of
True.
connection. But could you please tell us about that point of view, because now the arc with which we started with
Hmm.
actually very nicely covers all these particular points. What is your thought process in looking at science from this kind of viewpoint?
The science has really bloomed
Mm,
in India, and I think we are doing cutting edge
mm,
research in most places, because of the quality of science that we were trained
mm,
initially. Now we are back in India. A lot of people have returned back in India. There was like a window when a lot of people were coming back,
mm.
because of a lot of new institutes that were coming into place, especially
Please.
the IISERs, a lot of the new IITs that came, and so there was a flood of
Mm,
researchers coming back, and I think that helped to enrich the
mm.
science in India from what it was before to what it is today.
Today.
And I feel we are there. It's just that I wish we had more money.
Mm, mm.
I mean, the funding, I wish it was a little bit more,
More.
because consumables still cost. I mean,
Absolutely.
we're
Absolutely.
still paying the dollar
Mm,
money, and although we are being encouraged to use more make in India, but
mm,
then the quality
mm.
is still not
Not
there.
there, yeah. Yeah, true,
So
true.
there's no point in spending money in something that is not going to help us in the research, although it's so-called make in India.
Mm,
And this is something that it's very difficult to compete with
mm,
big names that
mm.
have established over decades to come up with ingredients that are cheap, yes, but then so from batch to batch there's variation.
Variation,
I
yeah.
cannot go and buy that and
Yeah.
use it.
Especially, that is the last place you will have to do
Yes,
in, let's say, cancer research, right?
exactly.
That is the,
Because you cannot have your data varying,
yeah.
and then you don't know what the output is. So you go ahead and spend more money, and obviously it takes longer time for things to come
Come from.
from outside India. But other than that, I think the kind of knowledge, the kind of research that we're doing across India has really is really great, and it is, I would say, very close to what is being done abroad.
Abroad, yeah. Yeah, we see that's what our greatest strength is, the human resource.
Yes,
undoubtedly.
absolutely.
Right, because as you mentioned, right from the roots, in terms of training at school and colleges, even though there are a lot of problems within our education system, there are certain things which are correct, and sometimes it's kind of self-organized,
Right.
because
True.
an individual might actually take a lot of
Right.
initiative, and we have seen
Yes.
so many people who have emerged out of the system
Right.
that way. And that probably is a major issue. I totally agree with you. And the fact that even, let's say, even in engineering and also physical sciences, where the element of let's say the biological element may not be there, even there are certain things which are necessary for us to have to import and do things. There's still room for quality control.
Yes, I mean,
And
that is what is
yeah,
lacking
what is lacking, absolutely.
in various aspents
Yeah, true,
across.
true. Yeah, I hope somebody who's a policymaker who is listening by any chance to Pratidwani, please listen to us. Because as you can see, these are all very important problems. If you really want to make progress within in the country, it would actually positively impact it.
Yes,
right? That is an
absolutely.
important thing. Yeah, I'm hopefully that is going to get better. So your overall experience, having worked in India and two big Western countries, English speaking, because there we like it or not, they actually really are the
Right.
dominant
Right.
kind of
absolutely.
apart from, let's say, Germany, if you also count them in. They are kind of power centers, so
Right.
to speak. How has your experience been in America? You did mention very nicely about your personal experiences, but having worked in all these countries for a reasonably long period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
I think in the context of learning what the science is there and what can be done, what can be achieved, there's so much still to know. Um, just how to think about a problem was really helpful, which is what I obviously carried here, and I try to inculcate in my students too. They not always want to listen, but when they go for the postdocs, then they say, "Oh yes, you were right." I say, "Yes, because I'm an Indian speaking in India, I'm never right." But then you go somewhere else, and then you feel. Actually, I've had a lot of my students say that it was much better here in IISER Pune. They miss the kind of lifestyle they were used to here. It's much more harsher there, and nobody
Very
cares.
true. Very true.
Said, yeah. But then, yeah, I think the kind of knowledge I gathered there, the experiences, they've helped me to mold myself into a PI here, because no one trains you to be a PI.
Absolutely.
You learn as you go. There are setbacks. There are really nice times when you have really nice students that achieve a lot.
Yeah.
It's just it's a learning curve even for a PI as to how to manage individuals, because everyone is so different. It is tough to really figure out how one should interact with another student, because they're never the same, and I think no one can teach you that. It's just you go
Absolutely
with the wind at the time.
Very, very correct. Very important. You also train a lot of students, Mayurika,
Yes.
because not just only the postdocs and PhDs, so many undergrads too.
Yes.
How has your experience been?
It's been, I mean, so I guess the first lot of undergraduates that we had, the first few years, they were excellent students to start off with. They were also much smaller in batches, so we knew each one. We actually knew each one by their names. We knew them. I think it was, and also we were young, so there was more energy. And there was this, wanting to do something different. So actually, it was one of an undergraduate of the 20 a 2007 batch that set up this whole 3D culture in my lab.
Nice.
For his 5th year. So he said that, can we do something different? I said, fine. And he said, can we just do these 3D cultures? Can we grow cells in 3D cultures? Because he had read papers of actually a lab that, was in Boston at that time, and then know Joan Brogy's lab. I said, sure. And I said, if you need help, I can communicate with her and whatever.
Nice.
So the undergraduates are adventurous. They were adventurous at that time, and also you could take the risk then, and that's how the whole setup happened. And I'm actually the only 3D culture lab working on these particular cells in India.
Wonderful.
So I am the giver of these cell lines across
India. Is it? Okay, yes. So somebody listening, you know where to contact and whom to contact. So what is the 3D part of it?
So this is a matrix. So it's an extracellular matrix that the cells are kind of put in, embedded in, and each of these cells will form the acinine that if you give actually hormones, will secrete milk even.
Wow,
that's how close it is to.
So it's literally kind of a part of human organ in the cells.
Yeah. In that sense,
Amazing, fascinating. In fact, that element of newness is I totally agree with you. There's an element of play in undergraduates where sometimes they probably, or most of the time, they will err. But there are a few times they might get it right, and sometimes the rewards are far higher than what you can.
Because PhD students, they don't want to take risky projects. I understand, because you have a 5-year limit and you have to defend. I think you can do all these risky projects with undergraduates, and I've been happy because actually what my training or what I was working on, it's not really what I'm doing as in my own lab. I have moved a little bit away from what I had been doing as postdocs, because I wanted to set up my own system. And also you don't want to compete against your PI who's already established. And
that's one of the lessons we learned, right? Because it would be very difficult for you to really continue on the similar lines of research. And although some people do, some people would not want to. Actually, I totally agree with you. So the other larger point in the context of research in India is the participation of women across disciplines. Within there has been now also recent assessment, very nice assessment being done, and a published work also has come out where among different disciplines, biology is still better on a relative scale. On a relative scale, no way on the absolute scale. And going forward, even physics is no good. Mathematics has been also not great in numbers. Chemistry and engineering actually are way low. Means again, all comparative. Nobody actually has really scaled up a huge. This is a major problem because India is a very populous country. We do have very good human resource, irrespective of the gender. How should we approach the problem? I know there is no solution as such, but what are your thoughts on this, Mayurika? Because I know I should also mention there is a very nice talk by Mayurika, which I'll be linking, where she has given a very nice talk at IISER Pune on Women's Day, Women in Science Day, which is very nice. I strongly urge everybody to have a look at that particular talk. But please tell us a little bit about these parts of it.
So it's an issue, I think, that's across the globe. So we have a lot of women, if I talk for biology, till the PhD, and then it suddenly vanishes. And a lot to do is again juggling a family life or a research life. So you really need very, very support. If you're married and you intend to have children, you need to have supportive spouses, supportive family, greater family, who would actually encourage you to move ahead. Otherwise, it is a challenge. And I have spoken to many of my own students that have given up after their PhD, saying that you are really very good. You really should do something. But then the thing is that they don't have the support, or in-laws are saying that no, you take care of kids. And that's it. It is very sad. I mean, and the other thing is that, again, having proper daycares, that's important for both men and women.
Absolutely.
and the two-body problem. So, I mean, you being alone with a child in one city and your spouse is in another city, it is very difficult to
Very.
manage. And I know we actually know of individuals here at IISER that have been managing, and it's not the best option out. I think it is, and so also again there are many other reasons like where you take maternity leave. It's a big setback, especially for women, because initially you are at the same level in the career with the man, but then suddenly even taking 6 months off, you are actually back by a year, because by the time you get back, things have advanced. Everything just slows down. IISER Pune has thankfully now put in a policy where it will be considered that you are taking a break. But not all places. I mean, IISc does have it, and we actually follow the IISc policy, and that's what we also implemented here. But that's only maybe 3 years ago this thing has come into being. But most places don't. So then you are, even when you become a faculty, you will become, at least a few years behind the person with whom you actually started together. And then that just goes on and on. And the reason why we don't have women at in heads of be it deans or be it directors is because in the academic ladder we just were always a few rungs behind the male counterpart, which then you people aiming to be directors or and having awards, you don't qualify for those awards because you pass that age limit that is there, and that just puts women really behind.
On the back foot.
And I think just managing home and managing lab, which is also like another area where you have kids to manage, it is tough. It is tough.
Exactly. And every 5 years there will be a renewal of
which is different personalities. And they're getting more younger
exactly.
the previous lot, and it becomes very difficult.
Very true. Yeah, because also we this is a common observation. You would have also seen, you train undergraduates and you literally gift them off, having brought them to a particular competence which will be very useful for your lab. But the nature of the kind of programs are such that they will have to also move on, and we will also have to somehow manage it. But you can see they have all flourished, including our PhD students and postdocs, many of them. Yeah. So in this kind of larger framework, is there anything, let's say at an individual labs one can do? See, this is a prototypical example. I can understand women scientists heading the lab. They would actually at least be aware of this. Sometimes people, especially men, even with all good intentions, may be totally oblivious to this, because if they are not really coming from a background where they have got exposed to this, of course external programs might help, but is there something one can do about this, at least to get sensitized?
So the awareness needs to be given to individuals, because as again, people come from different parts of the country, different backgrounds, etc. So they may not have had that exposure that some individuals come with. I think when we do the gender sensitization workshop, these are things that needs to be mentioned. That not, I mean, I know that some people said, okay, let's not have a woman, or even if a person gets pregnant, they say, oh, it's a kind of a, oh no, that means there goes 6 months of work. I think that attitude has to change. I understand work will not happen, but that is part and parcel. That's a reality. That's reality. And we know that even abroad and sometimes here in India, people tend not to take women that are of the age of childbearing age, because they will take time off. I think if the woman is really interested in the science, can manage. It's very difficult.
Difficult.
I can say for myself.
Yeah.
It is a balance. It's a challenge and it's a balance. And you may fail sometimes in one aspect. You may fail in the, but you know, it just
it's also this attitude of looking at success in academia only through some
one
specific
yes.
metrics is actually ruining the
True.
goodness of the academics.
True.
See, how would you measure somebody whom you're training who goes on to do good work? There is no metric for that, right? But
No.
you can see you have really affected a life there.
Right.
Somehow that doesn't get.
Yeah, and also sometimes there you have these talks by so-called role models. We've had a couple of talks actually even nicer, where it was actually very detrimental to what they said, as to saying that it's best not to have a family. Or yes, be married but not have kids, because kids is obviously the one of the big areas where women have to participate a lot. But I think that's very wrong, because that sends a very wrong message to women that then they'll decide, okay, I want family, therefore I will not do science, because my spouse is earning. I don't need to do the science. But I think you need to keep yourself engaged. You've studied so much. Exactly. You have the ability to continue. Why not? I mean,
and a viewpoint.
Right.
That is something, especially in physical sciences. We have seen this. Some of the women, the mathematicians, for example, have done some outstanding work. You went on to even win the Fields Medal and other things too. But even my own research area, for example, optics traditionally has been a very men-centric. But there have been few people who have really done outstanding work. So much so that even a Nobel Prize was won. Yes. And there is some requirement of a change in the attitude. Yes. I agree with you in that sense. Yeah. Hopefully, things will evolve.
It's a very very long road. But I think little changes that is happening on the way should hopefully. Yeah. I think the main thing is awareness. I mean, including the directors being made aware that these are some of the, I don't want to say them as issues or problems, but these are some of the aspects that one needs to keep in mind when you are thinking about promotions or whatever.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. There is at least some kind of talk in the community now, which is already a slightly small step, positive step. But as you mentioned, there's a long way to go.
It's a long way.
Okay, we'll now shift to much more lighter stuff, where we are kind of going towards the conclusion. First is where you could tell us a few words in your mother tongue about your motivations and your interests. This is actually an important thing, because I keep asking my guests to speak in their mother tongue, so that even speaking a very short kind of duration in their mother tongue connects to people who may understand you from that language.
Right.
And there is a unique connection, as you know, through language. Just a few sentences.
It's tough because you're always thinking in English.
Yeah. So. No, you can actually. You don't need to be purist in
no,
language.
No, that's not gonna happen. আমাদের দেশে বিজ্ঞান করা খুব জরুরি। বিজ্ঞান করার জন্য তার যা পড়াশোনা আমরা স্কুলে শিখি সেটা খুবই জরুরি, সেটা মন দিয়ে করা উচিত। কারণ বড় হয়ে যখন বৈজ্ঞানিক হতে তোমরা চেষ্টা করবে, তখন যা স্কুলে পড়েছো, যা কলেজে পড়েছো, সবই কিছু দরকার পড়ে, সবই কিছু একসঙ্গে মিলেমিশে যা রিসার্চ বা বিজ্ঞানের যে প্রশ্নটা থাকবে সেটা উত্তর দেওয়ার জন্য অনেক সাহায্য করবে। আর তাই জন্য বই পড়া খুব জরুরি। শুধু বিজ্ঞানের বই নয়, বিজ্ঞানের বাইরেও পর্যন্ত বইগুলো পড়া উচিত, যাতে একটা বড়ভাবে পুরো একটা ছবি দেখা যায় কি বিজ্ঞানে তুমি করতে চাও।
So, mini translation for
So
people.
to do science, one needs to really study well from school.
Mm.
It's not, you just don't learn it immediately, so you have to study from school, and because they will help you in designing your research questions in future, and not just reading textbooks, but reading books outside science is also important for a wholesome development of an individual.
Very aptly put. Very aptly put. So now we'll go to your recommendations. I know that you actually like literature a lot. I assume you also have other interests. You already mentioned jazz.
Yes.
Please tell us a little bit about the stuff. Anything which really has inspired you, motivated you, any form outside science. And how do you relax? That is also something.
Reading books.
Reading books. Yeah.
Reading books, cooking.
Cooking. Yeah.
So books have been my sole companion. I can just if I'm down, I like reading my book. If I need to read my book when I go to bed, I have to read at least even a page, if
Fantastic.
not more than that. It's just that the knowledge, the what you get to know about different places, different cultures, different it's just so it's other than crime, which is also interesting, but in general non-crime fiction, just fiction. It's just amazing to read, especially when I started reading Marquez for the first time. It was, as it says, it's magic realism. It is truly magic realism, and from Marquez I moved into Jose Saramago, and when I read his first in his book Blindness, that just blew me off. And then I just read all his books. So when I start on an author, I tend to read all the books of that author, because you just get involved. And then my next one is Orhan Pamuk, the Turkish writer. Amazing. Although I see, I'm not reading the writing in their own language, which is a shame, because I think it's much it's different, because when I read a Bengali book and I read a translation, I can see there is a difference. But at least the translations are good enough to mesmerize you. So books are my sole companion to start off with. As I said, I love art. I used to paint. I learned painting actually, nice. But that was only in school. But I do appreciate art, and I like abstract more than the Renaissance, or even so I would say more abstract paintings is what intrigues me. And the other thing is, obviously, I like going to theaters. Here I've only managed to go for English and Hindi. Marathi, unfortunately, I will not be able to understand completely, and that's what I miss, because that was something I used to do in Kolkata. I would go for Bengali plays, and it's really nice to listen and hear actually really famous plays happening there. So, but then the next thing is my cooking. I love cooking, mainly non-Indian stuff. I cook a lot of non-Indian stuff. I buy cookbooks. This is, I think, from England itself. I used to have these cooking cards that I used to get. Thing was that I never knew cooking till I left the country for my masters. I never had to enter the kitchen. My mother did all the cooking. She would wake up at 5:30 in the morning and make our so-called breakfast, which was rice, dal, fish, and a vegetable, before I went to school.
Wow.
And so when I went to England, I had to ask her, please. So there was no email. So write the recipe. So even to make rice, to make dal, I still have those recipes. Those are like so precious, because these were handwritten recipes, which I have them with me. I even I typed them because I didn't want to lose them.
You can digitize them now.
Yes, so I think because these are going to be memories.
Absolutely.
And they still are now memories. Absolutely. And that engaged, because I think cooking is like science. It is science. It's not like science. It's chemistry. So how you measure things and how you make sure that the amounts are perfect is what you also do in a experiment.
Absolutely.
And nowadays I actually don't look at recipes, but I try to make my own stuff by adding ingredients from the flavor and I just enjoy it. And I guess Arnab and my daughter, but they actually enjoy my food because they know for dinner it's going to be some
esoteric
stuff.
Nice.
So cooking actually relaxes me. I know it's very hot and whatever, but I think that's a place I'm there by myself. When I'm there in the kitchen, I don't want anyone around me. Starting from the chopping of things and putting I do it totally.
With the music in background or something? No,
not necessarily, because there's so much of other noises. It's fine. It's just that I'm concentrating and I'm really focused on what I'm doing.
Fantastic, fantastic, amazing. That's actually a nice way to relax. In fact, it gives a different dimension also to somebody. So before we end, one question I generally ask is about your future projects, what you're thinking about your work, what kind of work you want to do, in what directions you would want to take your research, or any other projects you have.
So definitely following up on the breast cancer aspect, because we still have not found a number of biomarkers, as I was mentioning. So that is still it's an ongoing work, and doing a little bit more of translation, where it will make a difference to the patients. Finally, that is what we are working towards. That requires a lot more collaborations with clinicians, and because just what we read in papers, etc., and what is actually happening in the clinic is very, very different. And so trying to go more into the translation aspect, and still sticking to what the expertise in the lab, and using this model system along with, obviously, we also use a lot of mice models even. Just making using both the systems will help. And also with the 3D system, making more of making it more real, because here it's only the cells in that matrix. Now adding making co-cultures, or adding more cells in the system to make it more in vivo, or in more
come
real.
closer to the actual situation.
Because otherwise we study in mice, but then finally it does not translate into humans. So it's really important to take human cells and then see if we can really understand what's happening. So that's what, and I think that's where the research is going in cancer for everyone. Taking the patient cells, growing them, and then seeing what is happening.
Fabulous. All the best for the wonderful and important research area. As usual, it has been wonderful, Mayurika, having this conversation. Apart from learning new and very interesting things, also getting to know the fabulous kind of arc which we started with, and going granular on that particular arc has been very enriching. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pawan. It was a pleasure, actually. It was really nice talking in Pratidhwani. So
my pleasure. My pleasure. So this is Pratidhwani, where we try to humanize science. This time with one and only Mayurika Lahiri.
Thank you.